Day. This is Conduit News Radio, and I just want to take the time to introduce you to Michael Quinn Sullivan. He's on the line with us. I actually think we have video of him. He's a fifth-generation Texan. He is the president and CEO of Empower Texans. Michael, welcome to Conduit News Radio. Thanks for being with us.
Hey, Paul. Great. Thanks. I appreciate the chance to be with you today.
There we go. Hang on one second. I think we're having trouble getting you, Michael. Can you hear us?
I can hear you just fine.
There we go. We have you. We have you on the program now. All right. So it says here I'm reading from Empower Texans website. The Fort Worth Star Telegram said Sullivan slays taxpayer dragons in Austin. When the heat is on in Austin, Michael Quinn Sullivan knows how to make it even hotter. Texas Monthly dubbed him the enforcer on their list of the 25 most influential Texans. The Dallas Morning News has called him the state's most influential unelected Republican. How do you respond to that? Those are very big compliments, in my opinion, sir.
They're either compliments or they're kind of the old saying, those whom the gods seek to destroy, they first praise. I think that it's always nice when your enemies want to talk about how powerful you are. What I tell my staff is, when people are complaining that we're too big, too powerful, just shut up and let them finish speaking. Is kind of our approach.
Yeah, I think that's a really good. Can you tell us a little bit about your organization, Empower Texans, and what you guys hope to accomplish? I see some great things here. On the About page, the greatest threat to our state's economic growth and competitiveness is the weight of government on the economy. I completely agree.
Yeah, so our organization takes the tact that most of government is improved when we have more people involved and more people engaged. And unfortunately, a whole lot of our modern system of government, listening to the intro a second ago with Ronald Reagan talking about having a place for self-governance, that's absolutely true. The United States, the state of Texas, the state of Arkansas, we were all designed to be these laboratories of experimentation on the simple question: can people govern themselves and not by some distant ruler, as Reagan put it? That remains to be as true today as it was in the 1980s, as in the 1780s. And at Empower Texans, we seek to try to amplify that, to make that more real. Whether you're talking about cronyism, where it's a very small number of legislators and bureaucrats who decide what rich corporation from somewhere else is going to get your money. That doesn't happen when you have a lot of people watching. Those kind of decisions only happen in the back rooms. You just go down the line of all the decisions, all the bad decisions that are made in government. Those get improved when you have more citizens involved and paying attention. So that's what we try to do. We try to give citizens more opportunities to see what their government is doing and to participate in government at the federal level a little bit, but much more importantly at those levels of government that are more impactful to citizens, which is at the state and the local level. As conservatives, I get so frustrated when I know that most of my conservative friends can tell you the names of prime ministers of countries that I couldn't find on a map if you paid me. But yet they don't know who their city council members are, their school board members are, their county sheriff. And those are people who can really impact your life. We need to be bringing our principles to bear at all levels of government, not just the sexy ones that get you on Fox News.
Yeah, that's a really good point. We're talking with Michael Quinn Sullivan. The organization is Empower Texans. You can go to empowertexans.com and find out more about this great organization. This is kind of part of a series, Michael. We've talked to people who run organizations in Pennsylvania, in Virginia, and now we're looking at Texas. And we're trying to do this as a way to encourage the grassroots activists here in Arkansas, because we are a big government state, even though we've just
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the program today. Good morning to you. My name is Paul Harrell. This is Conduit News Radio, and you have found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality where we are building a liberty machine. We want you to be a part of that liberty machine that we are constructing, and one of the ways you can do that is to just communicate with us. Let us know what you think about the program. You can text or call 870-275-9799. You can also go over to facebook.com/Conduit News. That's facebook.com/Conduit News, where we are up and broadcasting live on Facebook, and we've got a growing audience there. It's always a lot of fun to talk to you guys and see how you're doing. Hope everybody had a good weekend. We've got a lot to get to now. On Saturday night, the Boone County Republican Committee had Jan Morgan, Republican gubernatorial candidate, as their keynote speaker. Now, she was scheduled to do this event like 6 months ago. And, of course, now she's running for governor, and Asa Hutchinson wanted in on some of the speaking, and it was kind of a back and forth, I understand, between people negotiating. Asa wanted to speak last. Of course, that's not what happened. Jan Morgan spoke last. Governor Asa Hutchinson spoke first. And I want to start with Asa's audio first, and then we're going to get to Jan's. Let me give you let me editorialize it for you for a second, because I've listened to both speeches. And I will tell you that Jan Morgan's speech was not a typical Jan Morgan campaign speech. That's not what you're going to hear today when we go over the audio and video for those of you watching the program. It wasn't a typical Jan Morgan campaign speech. She actually wrote a speech out, which is rare. I've never seen her do that. She normally does not read from a script. She likes to just, talk to the people, walk around, look people. She makes great eye contact. And so that's not what it was about. This Jan Morgan's speech was a summary of the things that she has heard on the campaign trail from the people. And what she did last night on Saturday night, was give the Republican Party a warning in terms of, if we continue to govern this way, and I'm summarizing, if we continue to essentially ignore what I've been saying, ignore the reforms that the people of Arkansas have been voting on, if we continue to, in many ways, ignore the platform of the Republican Party, then Arkansas is going to wind up being a blue state. This was essentially her message. And it was done very well. She did not attack Asa directly. The only thing she said to Asa directly, I think, was, "Hey, I'm ready to have an actual debate." And so Asa gave more of a campaign speech. Asa gave more of a speech that was me. Jan Morgan gave a speech that was, this is what the people are saying. This is what I'm hearing as I've traveled the state the past 8 months. This is what I'm hearing. And Asa was having to essentially reintroduce himself. And I want to talk about that. I want to talk about, what does that really mean when Asa is having to reintroduce himself to Republican voters? And here's an example. So Kenny Wallace on Twitter, he live streamed this event and got some great footage of the event as well, and stuff on YouTube with, I think, Keep Arkansas Legal. We're going to get to that here in a minute. But let's go to the Facebook. Let's go to his Facebook page. Let's throw this up there. Here is Asa Hutchinson, part of his speech. Now, he just got through talking about how serving the people of Arkansas, being governor, is the greatest honor of his life. And then he gets into this area. Take a listen.
While I've been blessed, I have fought a few tough battles. Whenever you look back 30 years, and one of the state police troopers that's retired mentioned it to me, and he talked about he was at the CSA, the terrorist group in northern Arkansas, in which I was the young U.S. attorney that was called in, had a 3-day siege with this terrorist group, and I was called to help assist in the negotiation for the surrender of James Ellison, the leader of that group. I prosecuted them here, put them in jail, because I believe those battles are worth fighting for the rule of law. Whenever you look at my role as a county chairman, Dan, you do a great job. I've been a county chairman. Benton County, Sebastian County. Fighting that battle against the political machine in the 90s, I became state party chairman. And many of you were there when we had to fight that machine in this state to get an equal access to the ballot. And we got that with our equal primary system that helped give us a foundation for growth in this party and a two-party system in this state.
All right, stop for a second.
And
So Asa is saying that he used to fight the political machine. That he did fight the political machine. Now, let's assume that's correct. How are you fighting the political machine now, Asa? How can you fight yourself would be the next question I would ask. What are you doing to fight yourself at this point? Because you now are the political machine in this state. I think that's not in dispute. I don't see how anyone could dispute that. So I think it's fantastic. Taking you at your word. You fought the political machine in the state. What are you doing to fight it now? How are you going to war with yourself now? Politics certainly is different now than it was back then. I was the young U.S. attorney, he says. I was the young U.S. attorney that was called in to negotiate with that terrorist group in northern Arkansas. Okay, great. How far back do we want to stretch here? Why is Asa Hutchinson having to reintroduce himself to the people of Arkansas? That's what I want to know this morning. Can you go to his Ballotpedia page real quick? I just want to point something out to you for a second. If you go to Asa Hutchinson's Ballotpedia page, you see right there, let's just kind of go over this. This is his political career. In 1982, Hutchinson was appointed by President Ronald Reagan to be U.S. Attorney for the Western District of Arkansas. In 1990, Hutchinson ran unsuccessfully for the post of Attorney General of the state of Arkansas. In 86, Hutchinson ran unsuccessfully for a seat in the United States Senate. Okay, so in 1990, he ran unsuccessfully for Attorney General. That's a statewide election. That's number one. 86, he ran for the U.S. Senate unsuccessfully. Okay, so that's statewide race number two. In 96, he ran for U.S. Congress defeating. So he won in 96, but that's not a statewide race. In 2001, scroll down so I can read this, please, Joe. No, we're up to 2001. Hutchinson resigned his seat in 2001 of the U.S. House of Representatives because he got appointed by President Bush to serve as the administrator for the U.S. Drug Enforcement Agency. 2003, Hutchinson was appointed Undersecretary of Border and Transportation Security for the U.S. Department of Homeland Security by George W. Bush. Scrolling up. In 2006, Hutchinson ran against Mike Beebe for the seat being vacated by incumbent Republican Governor Mike Huckabee, who was unable to run for a third term. And he lost that race in 2006. So that would be his third statewide election. Okay? So 3 statewide elections. Yeah. And so then, of course, in 2014, he wins. Statewide election, he wins. So is that did I count that right? So that's 4 statewide elections. So would this be his 5th? So he's currently in his 4th or 5th statewide election, and he's having to reintroduce himself to the people of Arkansas. Now, does that seem strange to anyone? I know he's trying to prove his conservative track record, Joe. You're exactly right. But shouldn't we all be convinced of his conservative track record at this point in time? A guy who's been around for decades, who's run 4, now 5 statewide elections and been successful at one of them. I guess I want to know, why does he feel the need to I know he's campaigning. Look, I know that's the easy answer, but the fact that he has to reintroduce himself and remind us all of how conservative he is very, very strange to me. You know, it's kind of like, I think a lot of this is if the people should already know these things if he really has done things that have had a massive positive effect, net positive on the constituents around him. You know what I'm saying? Or if a lot of people don't. But you're right. A lot of people don't pay attention. But they are paying attention to Jan Morgan, right? And that poll the other week scared them of her getting 30%. There's another poll out that came out, I guess, let's see, a KRN poll came out on Twitter, and we'll show that to you later in the program. But Jan Morgan came out on top of that handily, and she said she intentionally didn't mention it on her social media pages because she didn't want to, put her thumb on the scale. I want somebody, feel free, somebody answer me. Or does anyone else find it strange? Asa Hutchinson's run 4 statewide elections. This is his 5th. And he's having to reintroduce himself to the people of Arkansas by reminding us where he came from. I find that odd. I think when you're having to do that, and again, the reason he's doing this is, I guess, this is all he has because of he can point to some things that he's done, but conservatism by association. That's really good, Joe. Conservatism by association. I would just think that you don't like the record you have when you're running against somebody who is an articulate conservative who is talking about the tax increases, right? I'll say I was listening to an Asa Hutchinson ad on a radio station over the weekend, and it was a new ad. It was about Arkansas being a pro-life state, and I thought, all right, here we go. Here is. To me, it was the most honest Asa Hutchinson ad so far. And I haven't listened to the I think maybe there was a few things that I thought was carefully crafted language, but for the most part, and I've given Asa credit. I've said when he, good job defunding Planned Parenthood of the Heartland. That was good. I don't think we should act like it's a tough decision to defund Planned Parenthood of the Heartland. Number one, it's Planned Parenthood. Number two, he defunded them right after the videos of them selling baby body parts came out. Pretty much a no-brainer. Is it horrific? Is it genocide? Yeah, it's all those things, but it's not exactly something that is, some sort of trigonometry level decision where it's like, what do I do here? It's like, no, they were selling the body parts of dead babies. Pretty sure that's a no-brainer. We don't want taxpayer money, Arkansas taxpayer money, going to that. And I'm glad he did it. I think it's a good thing. But, he can't really run. You got his supporters out there talking about how the tire taxes really didn't increase when we can look at the Department of Finance and Administration's own documents that say it was a tax increase, and it was written into the law. They increased the fees, and a fee is a tax increase. So I just feel like the reason he's having to reintroduce himself is what Joe just said, conservatism by association. He's hoping it sticks. But to me, I just feel like that shows you how the last 3.5 years have been more about growing government than about reducing government. And so let's just, let's name drop, essentially. You tell me what you guys think. The number 870-275-9799. We're going to take a break. We're going to be back here in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. Back in a moment.
This is State Representative Dan Sullivan with a Liberty Moment. The Declaration of Independence states, to secure these rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. In other words, people are responsible for the character of their Congress. If that body be ignorant, reckless, or corrupt, it's because the people tolerate ignorance, recklessness, and corruption. If it be intelligent, brave, and pure, it's because the people demand these high qualities. If the next centennial does not find us a great nation, it will be because those who represent the enterprise and culture and morality of the nation do not abide in controlling the political forces. James Garfield. This is Dan Sullivan with the Liberty Moment.
Paid for by Sullivan for Arkansas.
This is Mother Government. I come to the people of Arkansas with an important announcement. In disloyal circles, some are questioning the scope and size of government, and telling the people government programs should not waste the labors of the people under the guise of taking care of them. This is a thought I must correct. People of Arkansas, you should not believe everything you hear unless it comes from a government source. Let me, Mother Government, set the record straight. You know you can trust me. After all, would your own mother lie to you? You should know the brand new, terrific program known as Arkansas Works has nothing to do with the old, bad program known as the Obamacare private option. Arkansas Works is good. People who say otherwise are bad and are seeking to undermine my collective vision for progress. If these groups continue in their criticism, then you should question their party loyalty. Tell them to quit focusing on this single issue. And then, remind them Mother Government says the future of Arkansas depends on this single issue. In my next address, I will discuss the need to prepare your fellow citizens for the next round of revenue gathering that will be needed to continue funding my motherly goals. This message was brought to you by our partner, Aristocrats, serving Arkansas. Thank you for listening, and remember, from cradle to grave.
PHP Parody. Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Yeah, so Joe, how long we known each other, Joe, for a little while now, right? A couple of years, several years, right? How many? 3, 4 years? Yeah. So Joe, what I need you to know though is I was born on a summer day in 1984. I don't know if it was a rainy day, but I was born on a summer day in 1984. I know we've known each other for 4 years, and I know you could probably judge my character and what I'm about based on the 4 years we've known each other. But I just wanted you to know that I was born on a summer day in 1984, and eventually I was in the fourth or fifth grade, and I went to an elementary school called South Elementary School. I need you to know this. I need to introduce you to these facts.
Well, I need to introduce you to a fact as well about myself.
Okay.
This also is about my birth.
Uh-huh.
My birth tells you a lot about me.
Yes.
I was supposed to be born on December 22nd.
Okay.
But instead, I was born 8 days later, which is the perfect like small analogy or small
Yep.
story for my personality that
Yeah.
I beat to the sound of my own
Well,
drum
here's the
at my own
thing. I
pace
was
and no one
I
else's.
was actually born with a bulletproof vest on to defuse a terroristic situation.
See, I was not.
A lot of people don't know that. But
I was not.
Yeah,
I
and
was
so,
born normally.
But in terms of my broadcasting career, like I need you to know more. I can't have I've almost been doing this 10 years now, but I need to go back to I need to go back and tell you about how when I was in the Gifted and Talented program, they did a newscast. And I actually did a rendition during the audition for the newscast. It was called Kids, KIDS, Kids Interviewing and Discovering South, because it was South Elementary Schools where I went. And I got the part of the lead anchor after reading a very creative version of Hey Diddle Diddle and the Cat and the Fiddle. I was interviewing the dish and the spoon, or I was interviewing the different characters about the cow jumping over the moon, and I was asking them, where were you when the cow jumped over the moon? And we got to the dish and we got to the spoon, and anyway,
so
I was on the
true
weekly broadcast.
The true question I need to be asking you, though, is did you come out of the womb with microphone in hand?
Yeah, well, I mean, what a lot of people don't realize is in 1984. Ronald Reagan was president, and I was born then, so that means I must be a conservative.
Oh, well, then I
don't know about the radio microphone thing, but
I'm talking about for your future career in radio.
I mean, all I know is conservatism by association. That's certainly the way to vote and make and formulate and make your decisions. Folks, if you're just joining us, good morning to you. You probably don't have a clue what we're talking about. We're discussing the Boone County Republican Party dinner that they had on Saturday, where Jan Morgan was the keynote, and right before Jan Morgan, Governor Asa Hutchinson spoke. And, of course, we're just discussing how odd it is that somebody who's run 4 or 5 statewide elections over the last, few decades.
I have bad news.
Yeah, what's up?
I was not born under a Republican regime.
Oh, yeah.
I was born under Bill Clinton.
Well, then
I must be a
I don't know if you
person.
can work here anymore. Then.
Well, I'm just going to leave.
So we're just discussing the fact that somebody who is a statewide personality in our political minds, Asa Hutchinson, has to reintroduce himself on the campaign trail in 2014 about being a U.S. attorney appointed by Ronald Reagan and all this other stuff, and just how it's less about his record, and it's more about, hey, I just want to remind you who I am. I just don't. I think if I just feel like if you go back to. And I could be wrong, but if you go back to like the David Pryors or the Dale Bumpers, I think everybody just kind of knew who. You could maybe even go back to Mike Beebe or Governor Huckabee. I just don't think there's this need to have to remind everybody, and because you already, I guess the concept of a self-evident truth. It's self-evident. Everybody already knows who I am, and we all should. At this point, I think the people are just kind of not on board with the current results that we have. And that's why Jan Morgan's running. That's why Asa Hutchinson has a primary opponent right there. So when we come back, we're going to get to the Jan Morgan audio from last night. We played you a little bit of Governor Asa Hutchinson. Again, Asa Hutchinson was more about me. Jan Morgan taking a different approach, not a campaign approach. It was more about us. It was more about the people and what they are saying. We'll have that coverage for you in just a moment. And coming up at the bottom of the next hour, we're going to be talking to a man who was on the Arkansas State Plant Board for 18 years, was recently removed, and we're going to get into corporations like Monsanto versus the local farmer and the plant board, and the dicamba issue, and people being removed from the plant board for criticizing things, and how we've talked and documented this a lot. The governor has wanted to take over the plant board for a long time. He has failed so far in 2 different attempts, and it has a lot to do with the unspent money and the lack of control the governor has over that money. He wants the plant board to essentially be absorbed underneath the Department of Agriculture. Plant board, by the way, reaching 100 years old this year. 100 years old. We'll have that at 7:33, and you don't want to miss it. We're probably going to get into trouble. Back in a minute.
They've got Conduit News that is on multiple stations across the state. It's pretty much an attack machine on what I'm trying to accomplish in this state, and their message is getting out, and no one else's message is getting through.
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Kind of gone, to the Republican side of things. And I guess so I would ask you what I've asked them. What about the backlash that you guys get when you guys try to educate the citizenry about maybe somebody who claims to be a limited government conservative? What kind of backlash can you get when their voting record doesn't match their campaign rhetoric?
Oh, it's glorious when those folks react, because it's never good. I've had private investigators tail my children. We've had death threats. We've had people threaten, calling up donors and threatening them, people, or at least people they think are donors. So these guys all respond the way the emperor responded when the kid said, "Hey, you're not wearing any clothes." But that's the challenge is finding folks, and I'm very blessed to have a fantastic staff and fantastic donor base who are committed to exposing the delta between what politicians say at home and what they do when they're in office. Ideally, there is no sunlight between what is said and what is done. But unfortunately, and it seems to be particularly on the Republican side, where we see these guys who want to campaign as the second coming of Ronald Reagan, and yet when they get into office, they legislate like Walter Mondale. We have to put a stop to that. It's not fair to the voter. The voters are being lied to, and again, they don't respond well. The elected officials don't respond well. We try to keep things focused entirely on the objective voting record and say, look, here's how they voted. Explain the vote. Well, it's often funny. The politician will turn to, oh, no, don't look at my voting record. Look at the things that I've done. I've coached Little League. I've mow my lawn nicely, whatever all it might be. They don't want to talk about their voting records, which is what tells us we need to talk a lot more even about their voting records.
No, that's exactly right. We're talking with Michael Quinn Sullivan. Again, it's Empower Texans. Now, he's a former newspaper reporter, and I'd love for you to tell us about your experience and how does that shape what you do in Texas, but also a Capitol Hill staffer, a think tank vice president, also an Eagle Scout, a graduate from Texas A&M University. And so tell us.
Which may not get me any love in Arkansas, depending on where we are in the calendar.
Yeah, of course not. But still,
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
I do need to remind you of something. I dropped the ball on this. I did say, Governor Hutchinson now, running for re-election, and he's, does have some pro-life ads running, talking about how Arkansas is the most pro-life in the state, or most pro-life state in the country, rather, and everything else. But I did want to say that if we are the most pro-life state in the nation, shouldn't we be against Arkansas Works? And the reason I say that is that it's the same logic of Asa Hutchinson defunding Planned Parenthood of the Heartland because they're selling baby body parts. That had to do with taxpayer dollars. Well, taxpayer dollars are going to fund Arkansas Works, and these taxpayer dollars. It's very well documented. Taxpayer dollars are going to fund abortion, what are called abortifacients, or abortion-inducing drugs. To where if you have, a fertilized egg, you can take a pill and you can actually end the life. And our taxpayer dollars are going to fund that. It makes politicians very upset when you tell them this, especially ones who claim to be pro-life and then they ignore the concept of Plan B. They don't think it's big enough, I guess, a big deal or whatever. But if we're going to talk about scientifically what our taxpayer dollars are going to fund and not fund, that's one of them. And matter of fact, I mean, I know Senator Jason Rapert's been in the news recently, not just for the Ten Commandments thing, but for the whole Jezebel comment, him calling Jan Morgan Jezebel or Spirit of Jezebel. But he actually very publicly, back in 2016, in a committee meeting, got it into the record that this money's being spent on abortion-inducing drugs to fund these insurance policies under Medicaid. So, if we're the most pro-life state in the nation, as Governor Asa Hutchinson's ad suggests, seems like we should act like it. What do you think? Phone number's 870-275-9799. Call or text us. We're covering the Boone County Republican Party. They had Jan Morgan as their keynote speaker. Asa Hutchinson's speech was a typical campaign speech, and it was very light for the most part, but it was also him having to remind us, me, and Jan's speech was more about the people of Arkansas. Let's listen. Kenny Wallace got this footage. He was at the event. We're going with the first Jan Morgan cut. Whenever you're ready, take it away, Joe.
But anyone here who is expecting and hoping that there will be a verbal jab fest between the governor and I are going to be sadly disappointed tonight, because that's not what's going to happen. I'm going to save that for the debate stage, which, by the way, Governor, I keep asking you, I've been challenging you since January 1 to a debate.
Burn.
No, the message that I have to deliver to you tonight is much more important than a message about a race between Jan and Asa. The message I have to deliver tonight is about the future of the Republican Party. It is about what is at stake if we fail to heed the message that 72% of the people of our state sent in the last presidential election. I am here tonight to deliver that message. I want you to know that over the past 8 months, it has been my greatest privilege to travel this state and not only talk with the people, but more importantly, listen to the people. I have been in every corner of this state. I have listened to people from all walks of life and from all backgrounds. And so the message that I have to deliver tonight from them is what I'm about to share with you. I'm not delivering a campaign speech tonight. Those of you who want to know about Jan Morgan and why I'm here can look on the janmorganforgovernor.com website. My policy platform is there.
Stop for a second.
The message I'm delivering...
I'm telling you, the Asa Hutchinson campaign, they were not ready for this speech last night or on Saturday night. They were not prepared for this. They thought they had people, I'm told, in the crowd ready to if Jan would have directly addressed Asa on the issues of his tax increases and things like that, I think they had people in the crowd who were ready to heckle and boo. They were not ready. This was a, in my opinion, just a really, really strong political move, because there was a ton of Jan people there. There was a ton of Asa people there. And this was a speech to the Republican Party saying, you guys better start enacting the policies that you campaign on, or the Republican Party is going to take serious losses, in 4 years. And I've said this for a long time. Do you know why I've said this? Because it's the same reason that Barack Obama was easily able to walk into the White House. Because George W. Bush was not a conservative. He grew government more than any president until Barack Obama. And when it all came crumbling down, and when he talks about this bogus, I had to abandon free market principles to save the free market with all the bailouts. When he did all of that, supporting the big banks and the big financial industries that are tied to all of this global policy that they're trying to enact, when they did that, guess what? The liberal media said conservatism was tried and failed, and now we have to try progressivism, and conservatism had never been tried at all. There was no Calvin Coolidge type policy being implemented by George W. Bush, and there's no Calvin Coolidge type policy being implemented by Asa Hutchinson. And so if we continue down this path, we're going to have disastrous results. We have a governor that successfully lobbied to get an amendment passed to where we can put an unlimited amount of debt on our state to finance bonds and give away to private companies. Cities and counties can now do the same thing, finance bonds, and they can over-leverage us. And what do you think is going to happen when people start making bad bets, or we have an economic downturn, or whatever it is? Do you think John Brummett's going to say, well, we tried moderate Republicanism and maybe... No, he's going to say, we tried it the conservative way, and now we've got to go back to the Democrat way. And that's what happens when you don't actually implement the limited government policies that work when it comes to restoring more freedom and opportunity to the people and more voluntary cooperation instead of forced cooperation. We'll go back to Jan Morgan. Take a listen.
Tonight is for the Republican Party of Arkansas, and whether you are an Asa fan or a Jan fan, this message is for all of you, because we're all on the same side. And in the end, our goal is to keep Arkansas a strong red state.
All right, next up, that was the beginning of her speech. Jan Morgan then said this. Listen.
Republicans in control of our state capital, we should have made significant strides in reducing the tax burden off the backs of the people. And yet, we shift numbers, play shell games, and betray their trust. I stand here because our government continues to make laws that hurt the people rather than help them. I stand here because 10% of the state's most wealthy control policy through bought and paid for career politicians who serve the interests of the economic elites rather than the people at large. I'm standing here tonight because people no longer trust their government, because under Republican leadership, we have voted down legislation that brings transparency, ethics, and accountability to our state government.
Brian King's bill.
I stand here because I love our state, and because I care, and because I've listened to the people who are desperately searching for real representation in their state government. They're asking for town hall meetings again, folks, the kind that I've been doing now for 8 months. They want to look our politicians in the eye and our governor, and they want to have their voices heard. I stand here because I want people to know that there is hope, and that help is on the way, and that under Republican leadership, legislators should be free to work for the people rather than pressured to work against the people.
Well, she looked right at Asa when she said that.
This is truly a critical moment, folks, in our state history. The Republican Party will be judged for what we have done with the people's trust. Will we be the party that has repealed and raised the taxes on groceries, prescriptions, farming equipment, and church programs that feed the homeless, which is what our current tax reform commission under Republican leadership is talking about doing? Will we be the party of politicians who governed as we campaigned? Or will we be the party of politicians who misrepresented for personal gain? People are watching us. We, today's Republicans, stand on the backs of real conservatives who toiled for years in a blue state, growing the party, trying to convince the people that living and working in Arkansas is better under conservative leadership. We have had 4 years, folks, to prove to the people, and instead we have more tax shell games, growing government, and the embarrassment of FBI investigations and Republicans under investigation for corruption and kickbacks. We, the Republican Party, we are better than this. For the integrity of our party, for the sake of our state, and restoring the trust of our people. My presence in the political arena at this time and at this critical moment in our state's history is to sound the alarm. We must wake up, we must stand up, and we must fight for a return, a true return, to the foundation of this party and its fiscal, constitutional, and moral values that made it the party of, by, and for the people.
That's Jan Morgan at the Boone County. Stop right there. Boone County, really, really, really well done. Again, it was a message, not a campaign speech, more of a message to the Republican Party. This is what I'm hearing. This is what we need to be worried about. We actually have to govern the way we campaign. Really powerful stuff. When she brings up the corruption, now what's she talking about? Fiscal, constitutional, and moral high ground. This is the moral high ground that Asa Hutchinson, for example, should have called for Jake Fowles' resignation well before the indictment, or well before he pled guilty, okay? The Republican Party of Arkansas should have done the same thing, and yet they didn't do it. It's just so strange when you look at how much ground we've lost in being able to say that this movement of conservatism that can be found in the platform of the Republican Party, it's just, well, if you are high enough up on the chain, or if you're part of the good old boy system, if you were more of a maverick or a rogue conservative, as they would like to say, a non-intellectual conservative, as they would like to say, and you had a conservative voting record, and you were even hinted at being in an FBI investigation, they would immediately call for your resignation. I'm getting a text from somebody who was at the Boone County Republican dinner. You should have seen Aisha total cringe. Yeah, so he didn't like this speech. I don't think, of course he didn't like this speech. She looked right at him, by the way, when she said we need to stop pressuring legislators, to vote against the will of the people. Let them vote for the will of the people. That's exactly what has happened, folks. That's exactly what. Well, the governor. I mean, you can go listen to our impression of the session DVD, where we interviewed all these legislators and lobbyists. Well, not lobbyists, but we interviewed, for example, Jerry Cox of the Family Council. Well, I mean, he's a lobbyist for family values, and he said, but the governor. I got to check with the governor. They agreed to run the legislation, but then they backed out because of the governor. I mean, it is, and it hasn't been like this. For the people who are saying, has not been this bad since Bill Clinton was down there. All right, last Jan Morgan cut. Or is that the last one, or you? I think no, we didn't do the middle one. We didn't. Did she? Okay. And what's the third one? We haven't done that one. Look. Okay, well, so this is the last one. Okay, so cue the last one. Sorry, Joe. My apology. I know. Okay, go ahead. Last cut, Jan Morgan here at her speech.
The Governor, I look forward to debating all those points you brought up in your campaign speech.
Oh, this is more. This is more the beginning.
Let's talk about that.
This is more the beginning.
Here's the message from the people of Arkansas to my fellow Republicans tonight. And you all that know me and have heard me speak before, you know I normally don't write a speech. I like to walk around. I like to just talk with the people. But because I'm delivering a message from the people, and these are their words, and I want to make sure that I don't forget anything, I wanted to write it down for you. Please listen to what the people have had to say that we, the Republican Party, must hear. There is a great disparity between the Arkansas that our government tells us we have versus the Arkansas that most of us live in. There is a great divide between those few prospering off our state government and the forgotten people who pay for that prosperity.
That's right.
There is something wrong when people fear their state government instead of our government fearing the people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There is something wrong when our state house is viewed as the marble palace rather than the servants' quarters.
Whoever came up with that term.
There is something wrong when our government agencies, supported by our people's money, use our state agencies to destroy families, regulate businesses out of business,
DCFS,
and tax our people into poverty. There is something terribly wrong when our politicians use carefully crafted language and creative number games to deceive people about the reality of our state's condition and what our party is really doing while in control of our state government. For example, let's talk about the unemployment rate. We can talk all day about we're responsible for the lowest unemployment numbers in Arkansas history. But the people of Arkansas are much smarter than that. They're not buying it because they know that that unemployment statistic is a reflection on the number of people who are just still out there trying to find a job. The real numbers and the numbers of people who are unemployed in our state are the numbers that we all know. And those are the people who have dropped off the rolls
they give up
of
looking.
those seeking employment.
No longer counted.
They are the
numbers.
people who are no longer trying, who have given up, and are now on our welfare rolls.
Or underemployment.
All right, stop.
Let's talk about taxes.
Yeah, you heard Kenny Wallace there whisper or underemployed. I mean, and then of course we're supposed to believe that these jobs are going to come when we have a skilled workforce shortage in this state. We're supposed to believe that the jobs are going to come if we give our taxpayer money away to Chinese companies. Amy on Facebook writes, she's channeling you, Paul. Amy, I appreciate that. I would just listen. Jan is she's great at presenting the facts of the reality of what's going on, and a lot of that stuff is stuff that we have talked about on this program for a couple of years now. And so it is refreshing that it's in the it's in front of these Republicans, It's in front of that are many of them are, party loyalists, but they don't know. A lot of people don't know what we cover. We need you to tell everybody in your sphere of influence about this program. I have said, here's an example. I have said for years, and you can look this up. I have said for years, you could take just little issues and take them to the people of Arkansas and catapult yourself on top of the political establishment. And I think Jan is attempting to do that. Now, we have Asa Hudson's big government record, which are not small issues, but here's an example of a small issue is what I mean. Okay, recording all committee votes or recording all legislative votes. These people pretend like they don't legislate in committee. They only legislate when they're on the floor. Well, that's ridiculous because committees are where bills go to live or die. The fact is, most Arkansans do not know that most of the legislating that is done by their representatives are not recorded or is not recorded. Most Arkansans do not know this. And so they don't know the legislative sleight of hand that takes place, the political trickery that is rampant, where somebody will vote for something on a voice vote to get it out of committee and then vote against it when they're on the floor. They vote for it to get it out. They vote against it on the floor. The bill passes. They look like they opposed it, but they really supported it. They helped it along. They did a political favor. Now, some people say, that's been going on since the 18th century. Well, maybe so, but I should think that I should have a right to know about it. Whether it's been going on or not, there should be a record of it to where I can say, hey, how come you voted for this in committee and voted against it on the floor? Most people are outraged when they find out that committee votes aren't recorded. Right? One of the main reasons I supported, affectionately referred to as on this program, the Benedict Arnold of the Arkansas State Senate, Senator John Cooper. It was part of his a stump speech that all legislative votes should be recorded. Guess what? Does he care? Does he try to get that? No, because he listened to the people at the Marble Palace say, you can't do it. It's just, we can't record all the votes. It would take too much time. Well, number one, that's not necessarily the case. You could do it very efficiently. But number two, so what if it does take more time? That means less bills. That means less, it's a slower process. It doesn't move as fast. Maybe the legislators will have more time to read the bills. See, how is it that Republicans have such a majority down there in Arkansas and we're supposed to be a conservative state. And I'm the one that has to point this out to them. I'm the one that has to suggest these ideas. It's because the gatekeepers, the people at the leadership. Jan Morgan hit it. 10% of the economic elite are controlling the policy. They're controlling the policy of this state with career politicians. She spoke to the heart of corruption in Arkansas politics. We're going to have Jan Morgan on the program tomorrow at 7:33. Back in a minute.
Buy, sell, and trade at Triple R Pawn in Ash Flat. Firearms, computers, sporting goods, musical instruments, tools, jewelry, and everything else you can think of. It's all at Triple R Pawn at the Light in Ash Flat. Gun enthusiasts, log on now to TripleRPawn.com and browse their amazing inventory. That's TripleRPawn.com. You can also call them at 870-994-PAWN. That's 870-994-7296. Let the great team at Triple R Pawn help you find what you're looking for. That's Triple R Pawn at the Light in Ash Flat, TripleRPawn.com, or call 870-994-PAWN.
If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
So the prosecution in the John Woods public corruption case ended its phase last week, and the defense took over. Doug Thompson reporting that the defense for ex-Arkansas Senator closes its case. Former college president asserts right against self-incrimination. Doug Thompson saying that two key players in the corruption case against former state Senator John Woods took the witness stand for the defense Friday, but neither had much to say. The judge restricted what attorneys could ask. The first one, the FBI's first lead investigator in the case. The second, a co-defendant who pled guilty 5 days before the trial began. Woods' defense closed its case Friday without calling any new witnesses, catching his remaining co-defendant's legal team off guard. Woods did not take the stand in his defense. So it looks like, folks, we're starting to wind down the case. So we'll keep an eye on this. But the defense essentially last week saying that the wire transfers of taxpayer money were, in fact, loans or payments to repay loans, and it wasn't wasn't what the prosecution of the government alleges, but there has been a ton of stuff laid out that is pretty convincing about this, legal grift, honest grift, dishonest graft. Seems to be dishonest. What do you think?
The news and talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 1230 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
They've got Conduit News that is on multiple stations across the state. It's pretty much an attack machine on what I'm trying to accomplish in this state, and their message is getting out, and no one else's message is getting through.
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
It is a great university, and so tell us just a little bit about what you've seen in D.C. And a lot of times what we get here locally is, Arkansas is a small state. We're not like Washington, D.C. In fact, we're exactly like Washington, D.C. And it's almost worse because less people know about it. Like you said, the sexy Fox News issues versus, knowing your city councilor, or knowing your state rep or your state senator and what the issues are.
Yeah, look, we Texans excel at marketing. We have marketed our state better than anyone else. We are the conservative nirvana. We are the, take your favorite adjective and apply it to something good about conservatism, and that's what we in Texas say we are. And I would suggest that a lot of what we have done as Texans, we have marketed ourselves as this conservative, and in some ways we've kind of deceived ourselves into believing that we're this very conservative state. And yet, when you peel back just the veneer of the marketing brochure, we've got a lot of problems in our government, both the state and local levels. Texas has the fourth highest debt per capita in the nation. We have in the top 15%. Property tax burdens. So the idea that Texas is somehow doing things right and DC is doing things wrong is a misnomer, because they're both doing a lot of things wrong. They're just doing different things wrong, I guess. When I talk about where we are as Texans, we are often kind of like the guy who's the least drunk guy at the bar, but yet wants to be held up as a model of sobriety. Texans should not be content with simply being better off than California or looking better than Louisiana. I think Arkansas and Texas can both agree it's not hard to look better than Louisiana many days.
This is true.
I'm going to get my Cajun friends are going to be very upset with me. But that's how we end up talking about ourselves, and that's not right. We should be talking about ourselves in the way Mom said to talk about yourself. Are you doing the best you can do? Are you the best you can be? Those are the measures that we should be striving for, not just going to bed each night praying that Jerry Brown continues to drive California off the cliff. When we look at Washington, D.C., a lot of things that we're looking at there is how much is our congressional delegation working to free Texas from onerous regulations? How much are they working to let Texans govern Texas? That's kind of we approach looking at the federal government, and then ask questions of our legislators. Hey, are you going to be able to govern Texas? When you don't have the excuse of the EPA and Obama IRS employees or whatever the excuse du jour is, are you going to man up and do what you promised to do when you were campaigning? That becomes the tension.
Yeah, it's encouraging that we have other states that are having the same problems that we're having. I want to ask you, though, about people moving to Texas and not changing their voting habits. They're moving to Texas because it's prosperous, okay? We have this a little bit in northwest Arkansas. We have Bentonville, which is the global headquarters for Walmart, and so it attracts a lot of people from a lot of areas who have, quite frankly, maybe more liberal, bigger government tendencies, and you can kind of start to see things change there. And so I'm wondering, what your thoughts are on people moving to Texas, because it is more prosperous than maybe northern states. But are they going to realize why the states they left, or because they were voting for people who just wanted more and more government?
Yeah, so I put on my my cheating reading glasses here because I literally just printed off a report this morning from the Dallas Federal Reserve, and it's actually a pretty fascinating report called "Gone to Texas: Migration Vital to Growth in the Lone Star State." I was trying to find a chart that had a little bit of what you're pointing to, but can't.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, it's hour number 2. Good morning to everybody out there. The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We are building a liberty machine here. 870-275-9799. Coming off a information-packed hour. Get the, well, you're going to have to get the video archives. Right now, for some reason, our SoundCloud account is completely messed up. And it's not just us, because I was like, are we being discriminated against because we're conservatives? By the way, go subscribe on YouTube so we can be discriminated against. That's our goal. But no, SoundCloud is something is weird with SoundCloud. It is not just the Conduit News Radio side of things. It is there's a lot of people, if you go online right now, saying my SoundCloud account has disappeared. So it's not just us. It is a problem. So we actually have nowhere to upload the podcast to right now, because the way we do it is we upload to SoundCloud. SoundCloud is linked to iTunes. So if you get it on iTunes, it's actually coming through SoundCloud. You don't know any of that. But if you want to get the program's first hour, we talked about Jan Morgan and Asa Hutchinson's appearance together at the Boone County Republican Party dinner on Saturday. You can get that analysis. You can go to conduitnews.com, click on video archives, or you can go to facebook.com/conduitnews when you get to your desk at work, and watch the beginning of the video, and you'll get the first hour. All right. But I want to start here. Conduit for Action over the weekend with a slew of new articles, but one is a follow-up story. It's a article written by the former head of the Bureau of Legislative Research, Mr. David Ferguson, friend of the program. He writes a question because we've been all waiting on this Attorney General opinion. Senator Linda Collins Smith asked for an Attorney General's opinion about the penalty of carrying a weapon without a concealed handgun license. Headline, Gun Rights Advocates, Attorney General delaying opinion to help certain candidates. That's the question that's posed in the article. David Ferguson writing, Attorney General Leslie Rutledge has done many things of which the people can be proud. Based on my experience of having worked with attorney generals in the past, I think she's done a better job than most in sticking to the law and her opinions. Some have had a tendency of writing contorted decisions to please a political constituency. However, some gun rights advocates are now wondering if politics is playing a role in the long delay in the Attorney General responding to Senator Linda Collins Smith's question on concealed handguns. We are fast approaching the Republican primary, and there are two candidates who would benefit from the answer being delayed until after the primary election, Governor Asa Hutchinson and Representative James Sturch. What should have been an easy-to-answer question has now taken over 3 months with no answer. The primary election is already very near. May 22nd is the date of the election, and early voting begins on May the 7th. During my career, Working for the Arkansas General Assembly, David Ferguson writes, I helped many legislators write letters seeking opinions from attorney generals. I helped legislators write questions to Attorney General Steve Clark, Winston Bryant, Mike Beebe, and Dustin McDaniel. Some of those questions were complicated, but I don't recall any I was involved with taking 3 months for a response. Senator Colin Smith's question only requires the Attorney General to read the concealed handgun law to see if it contains any prohibition against carrying a concealed handgun without a license. Senator Linda Collins Smith, like many others, concluded there is nothing in the law to require a license. I too read the law, and I too read the law, and it didn't take long to see Senator Collins Smith is correct. Heck, I was able to use word search to confirm the answer within a few minutes. Early in Attorney General Rutledge's term of office, she issued an opinion saying Act 746 of 2013 allows a person to openly carry a handgun. But at that time, she said a person couldn't carry a concealed handgun without a license because of the concealed handgun law. It was just an assumption about the concealed handgun law and wasn't backed up with any research. Why doesn't the concealed handgun law include a prohibition against carrying without a license? It was written as permissive because at that time, gun owners were looking for a way to carry a handgun without violating the criminal law, carrying a weapon. But as noted by the AG, Act 746 changed the offense of carrying a weapon, and now the offense only applies if you are carrying a weapon with the purpose to attempt to unlawfully employ it against another person. This change in the offense is why the AG agreed it is legal to open carry. Senator Colin Smith's question does not require the AG to take a side on whether she likes or dislikes the ability of a person to conceal carry without a license. The AG only has to give an opinion on what the law says. If an opinion is issued and it says you don't have to have a license, will that mean the concealed handgun license is obsolete? No. Even without being required, there are reasons someone might want a license. A person might want a license because it also lets them carry in states that recognize Arkansas's license. Some may also want to use the concealed handgun carry law into restricted areas under the enhanced carry portion. By the way, the enhanced carry law is a jumbled mess. David Ferguson goes on, I first thought the opinion would be issued in the first month. When that didn't happen, I thought it would be issued before March 1st because that was the candidate filing deadline, and a delay past that date might look like a political move to avoid an opponent in the primary. The delay has gone on so long, it now looks like the Republican primary may happen before the Attorney General answers the question. Are there candidates who benefit from delaying the answer until after the Republican primary? Again, yes, Governor Asa Hutchinson and State Representative James Sturch. James Sturch is running against Senator Linda Collins Smith in the Senate District 19 primary. Sturch is running on being pro-Second Amendment, and voters may not know Senator Linda Collins Smith's Second Amendment record is far stronger. An AG opinion given before the election would make more people aware of Senator Colin Smith's strong support of the Second Amendment. Sturch supporters would not want that. Both Sturch and Leslie Rutledge went to Southside High School in Independence County. Governor Asa Hutchinson is running against Jan Morgan. Morgan owns a gun range and has been a regular on Fox Business News, covering Second Amendment issues. The loudest critics of the governor have been Second Amendment advocates, and the governor didn't acknowledge open carry until it was clear Morgan would be running against him. Meanwhile, Morgan has long stated Act 746 allows both open and concealed carry without a license, making Arkansas a constitutional carry state. If you're not familiar with the term constitutional carry, it's the recognition that it's legal to carry a handgun without a license, both open and concealed. Constitutional carry is sometimes called Vermont carry. Vermont, the home state of Bernie Sanders, was one of the first to have constitutional carry. David Ferguson ends his piece by writing, I must agree with others. To delay the answer to Senator Linda Collins Smith's question until after the May 22nd primary, or even until after early voting begins, would be politics. Meanwhile, Arkansas handgun owners have been waiting since 2013 to get a clear answer on the context of their rights so they don't get into trouble. Senator Linda Collins Smith is trying to help them, but is being stonewalled. Again, David Ferguson is the former director of the Arkansas Bureau of Legislative Research. So, yeah, it would be nice if the Attorney General would just go ahead and release the opinion, because it really is a very simple question, and it would help clarify a whole lot of stuff. Now, let's actually go on over to, speaking of Senator Linda Collins Smith and State Representative James Sturch, State Representative James Sturch recently put out a mailer, and it has really caused some controversy because it's mudslinging, and it is, well, let me just tell you what Senator Alan Clark said about it. Senator Alan Clark said that James Sturch's latest mailer is the perfect example of weasel politics. Senator Alan Clark, standing up for his conservative colleague in the Senate, Alan Clark writes, they intentionally mislead the uneducated voter into misbelieving he is the conservative in the race. Let's enumerate the facts. Voting record. In 2015 and 2017, Linda Collins Smith voting record is the third most conservative in the Arkansas State Senate. His record is not in the top 60 in the Arkansas House. Seriously, his voting record scores just above the Democrats. So his handlers want to cherry pick a few votes to mislead the voters. Let's start with number 2 on the postcard, because it's the big lie. Obamacare. I have friends on both sides of this issue, so I don't normally try to stick my finger in anyone else's eye. But here's the deal. Sturch only voted for work requirements because it was in the bill where he voted for Obamacare. She voted against Obamacare, period. What a mischaracterization of their records, and what a weasel. Senator Alan Clark goes on. Gun rights. For those in the know, Senator Linda Collins Smith poured her heart and soul into obtaining the least restrictive campus carry law possible. When that was defeated, she refused on principle to go along with what she considered a watered-down version. He was silent and led nothing. To spin this as him leading on gun rights is the worst kind of deceit. I fear it only predicts what we should expect if he wins after dealing with complete honesty from the senator from this district for the last 4 years. Love her or hate her, you always know where she stands. So Alan Clark is saying here, if James Sturch is going to campaign in this way, he does not look forward to working with him, or he's going to be very cautious working with him because not going to be able to know if you can trust what he says. Ducking out on votes. Speaking of knowing where she stands, there is no video of her ever hurriedly running out of a meeting to avoid being on the record on a crucial vote. When she did not vote, there was a reason. There are votes in which you say, I cannot vote for this bill to pass it, and although I will not vote against it because it has merit of some kind, I will not run out of the room either. Speaking of James Sturch killing special election reform at the last minute by scurrying out of the room. And we have video of that, and he gets a text message from some mystery person who is apparently telling him to leave the room. He checks his phone. He gets up right when they're getting to the S's so that the bill would fail. And he had just voted for the bill. And when they called his name, it failed. Then you have the educational savings account scholarships. When the Arkansas legislature was asked for a few hundred students under the very strict rule guidelines, beginning with the poorest students and families in Arkansas, to be able to use private scholarship money in a trial program to choose whatever education was best for them, Sturch not only voted against it, he spoke harshly against it. If he calls supporting local schools abandoning local families, then so be it. 75% of Arkansans support their own family being able to choose the school that is right for them without being trapped by a zip code. Senator Alan Clark goes on. The Republican platform calls for the same. Representative James Sturch on the floor of the House said he disagrees vehemently. Child welfare reform. Senator Linda Collins Smith, her perseverance, dogged determination, and work behind the scenes, there would be no child welfare reform. She was/is key in this effort. I hope you would support the candidate who always tells you the truth, he writes, who is truly conservative, and whose only fears are making the wrong vote and letting down her constituents back home. Here it is. I mean, you look at this mailer that James Sturch has put out, and it really is deceptive. I mean, it really, truly is. And, of course, I mean, we knew this was going to happen from the beginning, and we predicted this. This one vote here, James Sturch says he voted to reduce income taxes on veterans. And then, of course, Linda Collins-Smith refused to vote. Of course, what James Sturch is not telling the people is that there were tax increases in the bill. So, and we now know it was a net tax increase, more money coming from the government. And so, you know, we always knew this kind of stuff would go on. But this is, and it's sad when you have to take the, it's very difficult, and I don't know what you do going forward, but it's extremely difficult to, if you're not going to run an honest campaign and you're not going to say, hey, listen, I'm James Sturch, I'm against school choice. Let me tell you why. Let me tell you why school choice is bad for our public schools. He's not going to run on that because he would lose a Republican primary. So instead they have to shift. And it's really frustrating because when the other side is just trying to steal and claim that they're the most conservative, and they do it with this, you know, carefully crafted language or carefully crafted reporting of what the votes were, it makes it very difficult and it muddies the water. And I'm just ready for Republicans to I wish the big government Republicans would stand up for the big government that they believe in and they vote for and try to convince us with your argument. And I feel like that's the more honorable thing to do. But if you're only after power, or you're only after, being in the good boy club, I'm in the system and I have the support of the governor and I have the support of the so-called intellectual Republicans, you know, if that's what you're in it for, then the ends justify the means. And the means are, well, I'm not going to come out and say I'm against school choice. I'm not going to come out and say I'm for Obamacare in Arkansas. I'm going to come out and tell you the opposite of that to appear more conservative than my voting record actually is. And I don't know what the answer is to combat that other than doing exactly what we're doing now. But it's very difficult when you have people who are just willing to say anything to get elected. And sound conservative, and or just, you know, put up a bunch of platitudes or that sort of thing. All right, we're going to take a break. Don't go anywhere, folks. Back here in just a moment at 7:33, we'll be talking with 18-year member of the plant board, Mr. Ray Vester, coming up. We are back. Thank you so much for being with us. Kind of continuing on this James Sturch, it's kind of a reminder. Check this out. Go back to the Conduit for Action page, Joe, and click on the article, "Would you stand up and walk out on me?" We have all had people who have walked out on us, left us in a lurch, and we learn. We learn who we can trust and who is just using us. Representative James Sturch physically walked out on the people of his district. He got up out of his seat and walked out the door to kill an election reform bill. He walked out to do the bidding of a few lobbyists and politicians who want an easier path to raise your taxes locally. Politicians know it's easier to pass local taxes in special elections when the voter turnout is very low, and that's why there are special elections at random times throughout the year. Senate Bill 726 of 2017 would have stopped that tactic so that the elections would be held with regular elections when there's better voter turnout. The bill passed the Senate and was then voted on by the House of Representatives. As the House board lit up that day, it looked like the bill would pass. The initial results showed the bill passed and would go to the governor for his signature. But the results were challenged. That meant the yes votes had to be in their seats and reaffirm their yes vote. It quickly became apparent with the challenge that the bill would pass by one singular vote. James Sturch's vote. Sturch squirmed and fidgeted in his seat as the roll was being called. He looked at his cell phone and he got up as they called, Penzo. Penzo. As he walked out, they were calling, Shepherd. Shepherd. He barely got out before his name was called. His vote was stricken because he wasn't present, and the bill failed. It appears Sturch initially voted yes, only because he thought the bill was going to pass anyway and wanted to be on the winning side. But when it was clear that his vote was necessary for passage, he got his marching orders and showed his true loyalty. Sturch walked out on the 29,000 people of his district, which includes Batesville, Southside, and the surrounding area, and now he wants to be the senator from District 19. What makes you think Sturch won't walk out on the 83,000 people who live in Independence, Izard, and Sharp counties and portions of Fulton and Randolph counties? James Sturch still has his cell phone, and the lobbyists and politicians will still be calling him to let him know they are still more important than you. Share that article, will you? Facebook audience, take this article and blast it everywhere, because it's a good one. Let me put it up. Go to Facebook.com. Go to Facebook.com/Conduit News. That's Facebook.com/Conduit News. And I just posted it in the comments there. Yeah. It's pretty funny. Ladies and gentlemen, back on April 25th, the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette posted this article by Stephen Steed. It would be very coincidental if there wasn't a T in his last name and his name was Stephen Seed, but it's not. It's Stephen Steed, as in, equine. The reason it would be coincidental is because the headline here is 2 key dicamba ban voters have lost their seats on the state plant board. And he writes that 2 of the members of the state plant board who were instrumental in this summer's ban on the in-crop use of dicamba said Tuesday they won't be reappointed by Asa Hutchinson to new 2-year terms. Larry J. Rowe of Forest City has served on the board since 2000, and Danny Finch of Jonesboro was appointed in 2009. J. Rowe, who represented the fertilizer and oil mill industries, said he was informed Monday by the governor's office that he would not be reappointed. He says he was disappointed after personal meetings with the governor and following his instructions on dicamba. It surprised me that I would be replaced. We did what he asked us to do. Something tells me that that's not the case. Maybe he asks you to independently verify the effectiveness of dicamba. Wink, wink. When we come back, we'll be talking with 18-year plant board member Ray Vester, ladies and gentlemen, and he has a story to tell. Back in just a moment.
Found it fast enough, but the when we're looking at the inflow, what we're finding is probably half of the people who are moving here get it. They understand that they left California. They were.
Oh, so we got a freeze. I think we've lost a connection with Michael a little bit. Let's see. I don't know if we can get him back or not. It may kind of come back here in just a moment, Michael. So if you can still hear us, if you'll just hang back, and we'll let you finish your thought there. But fascinating interview, folks. It's Empower Texans. That's the organization. EmpowerTexans.com. The reason we wanted to highlight and have Mr. Sullivan on is, and these we've had other people on from other states that are involved in similar work that Conduit is involved in. And so when you see these Republican politicians get upset, you hear in most all of these states that we talk to, what they do is they try to go after donors. We've had the
California or New York.
Are we back? Are we back? Okay, Michael, can you hear me? We lost you in mid-sentence. Talking about.
Then you lost me at probably the right time to lose me.
No, okay. Well, so we'll kind of wrap things up here, and I apologize, but just what would you say to the grassroots out there in Arkansas who can get kind of discouraged because of the lack of change, and people have been voting for conservatism for a long time in Arkansas, it seems now, and yet we keep getting excuses as to why limited government can't work. What would you say to all those folks out there listening?
Well, first, buck up. It's not as bad as it could be. Two, that should be your excuse to being more engaged. Just because things haven't changed yet, just because things have been fixed yet, doesn't mean they're not going to be. We didn't get into our problems overnight, and we're not going to get out of them overnight. We have to be committed as conservatives to the long game. We have to be as my parents' generation, the flower children, down with the struggle or whatever. We have to do likewise. We have to be willing to keep fighting, to keep pressing on. Texas needs a strong Arkansas. Arkansas needs a strong Texas. The competition there. We shouldn't be in a race to the bottom. We should be in a race to see who can, have the greatest expression of self-governance, who can have the greatest amounts of liberty. None of us should think of ourselves as living on islands. We can steal best practices from each other. I think what Conduit for Action is doing.
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much for being with us today. It is the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. I want you to welcome farmer Ray Vester on the program. Ray is an 18-year member. He was on the plant board for a combination of 18 years, and he joins us now, Conduit News Radio. Ray, welcome, sir.
Good morning, Paul. How are you today?
I am doing well. I'm doing really well. So, Ray, I wanted to have you on because I've heard your story. I have heard your story and others like it on the program for a long time. From several different people in different sources. And so where I want to start is, let's start. I'll go over your resume. You were appointed by Governor Mike Huckabee, correct?
Yes, sir. I served 5 terms under Governor Huckabee, and then when he finished out his terms, Governor Beebe was elected. His first 2 years, he didn't appoint me. I guess maybe I was a little too conservative for him, possibly, but he and I had a good relationship. But after my replacement didn't turn out too well, for the next 6 years, he appointed me to 3 terms. And then Governor Hutchinson appointed me to the last term I served, which came due a year ago, a little over a year ago.
And you were not reappointed, correct?
Yeah, well, I was the first time, and I served 2 years under him. But then after that, and after our battle in the legislature, he chose not to reappoint me.
Okay. Why do you think that is? Well, you mentioned the battle. What battle? Tell us about the battle.
All right. Governor Hutchinson, when I talked with him to get his approval of an appointment for those first 2 years under him, after that, I also visited with him, and he gave me that appointment about he was seeking a Secretary of Ag. And I was one of the 2 that I know of who interviewed with him.
Mm-hmm.
And I was kind of enlightened that day of the interview, as the first question he asked me is what I felt about the Department of Ag and how did it need to change. I said, well, it doesn't really need to change, I don't think. It was started with the purpose of promoting agriculture. And I said, Mr. Bell and Butch Calhoun, who were the previous 2 secretaries of Ag, and I said did an excellent job. They have promoted it. They've developed the farm to market aspect and program. He said, well, I just think it needs probably to be strengthened. And he said, on the plant board, he said, now I don't really understand how people are appointed. I said, well, there's 7 positions that you, the governor, appoints of your choice of the person, and that's the cotton farmer, the rice farmer, of which I was the representative, 2 farmers at large, the fertilizer and oilseed representative, and also about 2 years before they added a forage producer and a cattleman. And those 7 are yours to appoint. 2 are University of Arkansas professors that serve ex officio, and the other 9 are appointed by industry. And I said that's the way it was set up since 1917, as far as I can read and understand.
Right.
And his response to me, he said, well, I just don't think that's good. I really think the governor needs to appoint all the members to that so that he has people who serve him. And I didn't realize how impacting that statement would be to me in the coming months. But our conflict came over the fact he tried to. I learned one thing. When the Department of Ag was started, the legislation called for 3 employees. I really think the beginning budget was maybe around $300,000. And that was supposed to employ 3 individuals to promote agriculture. And I may not be exactly right on that number.
Yeah.
But I discovered one thing. The governor wanted it to be more than that. And so that started changing, and he kind of used a term I'm accustomed to in the banking industry called cram down. And that's in mortgages, but anyway, that's a different number. And he was taking over control of the plant board. The plant board has been non-political since 1917. We went through 4, that I recall, massive epidemics in the state. The first one was in southwest Arkansas in Miller County, and the black fly infestation, which we today call buffalo gnats, was really devastating the cattle herds. and the plant board was asked to go take care of that problem, or went to take care of it. I don't even know if they were even asked. That's just their responsibility. And they went down there, and within 18 months had solved the problem. And two very important things that didn't have to happen. I think there was no legislation to allow them, because that was their responsibility, and there were no monies appropriated for them to spend to do that, because their income, the plant board gets a $500,000 appropriation from the legislature each year. Mm-hmm. And that $500,000 goes into an emergency fund, and it sits in escrow, and it's used if an emergency breaks out in, whether it's livestock, poultry, or even in row crop. That money can be used for that. Well, the plant board's never used any of that money. It's always sat there and never been used, because the plant board, through its fee structure and through its testing and through its licensing and there's 11 divisions in it, creates enough income to take care of that problem.
So about how much money a year? How much money are we talking about a year the plant board bring in?
Well, I don't know how much a year, but our annual budget of its own money is $950,000 that is budgeted to spend each year. They never quite spend all of it, but it is enough money where we use actually no good. That includes salary of employees. Now, they're considered employees and are in the state retirement plan, but their salary is paid by industry, not by anyone.
Well, my question is, we're talking with Ray Vester, 18-year member of the plant board, appointed by Governor Huckabee. My question to you, Ray, is this money that is there, and there's been 2 attempts now to take over the plant board. It's been defeated. You just said, what it sounded like to me, that Asa wants to appoint all members because he wants loyalists there that support him. Instead of, right now, I think we have a pretty good operation where you have some from him and then others from industry, and people are kind of, agriculture is a big deal here in Arkansas. It certainly is our lifeblood, and it sounds like he wants it to be more centralized. Right now, it's more you can have people that actually can debate issues without fear of political repercussions. But do you think he wants that money? Do you think one of the reasons he's tried to take over the plant board is because he wants access and wants to be able to spend that money how he sees fit versus what the plant board wants to do with it?
Most any situation in government or business or anything, all you have to do is look at the money. Yes, he desires to have that $950,000 annually in his coffers, and the battle we got into over the fact he was wanting to change the process from a number or a type 1 transfer to a type 4 transfer. And type 1 transfer, the money stays with the division that it comes to. Well, it's not even government money. Okay, that's the first thing, but it stays there. The type 4 is the fact that at the end of each year, the controlling agency, which in this part would have been the Secretary of Ag, sweeps that account empty, and they start over the next year.
So
go ahead.
I want to ask you this. How much of him wanting to take over the plant board has to do with Monsanto, in your opinion?
Well, I think it grew to be Monsanto also when he found out how powerful the plant board was and how we're, of the 50 states, is the only state that has any non-political regulatory authority. Politics is blocked to a degree from coming in and affecting what we do. Every other state has lost that, and they've become politically controlled, and the governor speaks for everything. And that's the whole. That's Monsanto grew into the problem he wanted. I think he foresaw. He wanted to control the money. He wanted to control the board and tell the board what to do. And then Monsanto comes along, and we had met with Monsanto 50 times over the previous 5 years, explaining to them the whole time we weren't going to approve their product, because they did not allow our scientists or any other ag scientists to test their product. And that's the basis we stood on, the fact we didn't allow it.
So why have you heard anything? Why didn't they want to test the product? I understand Monsanto hadn't tested dicamba. Is that correct? But you guys wanted to test it and run it through maybe one of the universities or something. Is that accurate? Where am I wrong there?
No, you're not wrong. That's what we always do. And pretty well every new chemical, every new process that is going to be sprayed and used in the state comes through our university scientists. And that was blocked by Monsanto. Late in this process, they finally brought us information where they had what they called independent studies by 4 different, it wasn't ag universities, 4 different testing companies. One was in New Mexico, one was in Alabama, I think one was in Illinois, and I don't remember the 4th one. And we looked at it, and they had done all these tests. But then when you get to the last page, the testing companies didn't develop the results of those tests. They didn't make a statement. That went to Monsanto, and Monsanto scientists interpreted what they had tested. So it still wasn't independent. And that was our biggest battle. And we told them,
Talk about the financial incentive for Monsanto here. Okay, so if they have a dicamba resistant seed, right, and then dicamba is now, if it were to be used, there would be people in a position to where, well, we can't buy any other seed, because if people are using dicamba, we've now got to buy their seed in order to stand up to the potential effects that a non-dicamba seed would die if dicamba was being used around the fields.
Well, not only that, but any other agricultural product almost that is raised in our state. And that's exactly what's going on. 2 or 3 years ago, Monsanto was running an ad about their Extended Max soybeans, and they said once this is in the marketplace, in 3 years, we will control 93%. We will have 93% of the production. And I understand why they could make that ad, because they knew if Farmer A plants dicamba-resistant beans and he's surrounded by Farmer B, C, D, E, and F, because Farmer A is big, all of those farmers will have to plant the dicamba-resistant beans to keep their crop from being killed. Mm-hmm. I think we see that. If we allow dicamba to be sprayed, it's going to eliminate non-GMO seed. It's going to eliminate seed that is organic seed. It's going to attack. It's already been proven to attack the honeybee people here in the state. They have a big examination of what it's done to them listed out there.
So you mean their honey crop has decreased when dicamba is sprayed? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir, immensely. And the biggest thing it decreased from is the other in nature plants where bees get their nectar from is also being destroyed. And the other big thing, it's destroying timber. Dicamba is timber is very sensitive to dicamba. And a lot of the trees survived it this year because we had an extremely wet August that put tons and tons of water into the timber. And the only way you can possibly save something like that is over-irrigate. Mm-hmm. And we believe that's exactly what happened this year. But dicamba is an old product. It came into being in the 50s at the same time 2,4-D and 2,4,5-T came into being as a product to use as a herbicide. And I don't know if dicamba is a brother to those two products or a first cousin, but it's developed the same way, and it has the same effect. 2,4,5-T drifts a bunch. 2,4-D will drift a bunch. 2,4,5-T is the one they call Agent Orange.
Yeah.
And that can be devastating to most anything it touches. Dicamba is very similar in nature.
I can't help it, but I have to ask this question. If this product's been around since the 50s,
yes.
I mean, is it possible that someone sat around and said, you know what we need? We need to sell people the cure. We need to release something that is going to have a negative impact on the crops, but then we'll sell them the one thing that can survive this negative chemical.
Well, I don't know about that. The biggest thing that happened to Monsanto, in my personal opinion, is they rode Roundup till it was no longer a viable product, till resistance was so bad, and they had put all their money into Roundup, and glyphosate is the proper name. I'm using farmer terminology, and they had nothing else. They hadn't invested in any other product, and they pulled this out of the closet because they didn't have any other option, and Liberty Link and these other groups were really hammering them. And with Monsanto, it's also the money. Mm-hmm. It's also the money.
Have you ever protested as a member of the plant board? Again, you're not getting reappointed by ASA. Have you ever protested or questioned why Monsanto lobbyists are allowed in plant board meetings?
Well, they're allowed. Well, they're scientists. We invited them in, and we have open meetings. No plant board meeting is closed to the public. If two of us meet for lunch, we can't tell anybody because that's considered a plant board meeting, and we have to invite the public to go eat lunch with us. That's how strict our regulation is.
So you never raised any questions about a specific person or lobbyist being present?
Well, we had an issue on the plant board when the governor appointed a farmer at large to a position as farmer at large, and he wasn't a farmer. He was an employee of Monsanto Chemical Company. And we battled that for a good while, complained, and after into the battle while, there was enough public pressure that person resigned, and he appointed another individual to take that position. But, that's...
Okay, yeah, so I'd heard that one before, that there was a Monsanto employee appointed to an at-large farmer position, and that didn't make any sense, and I guess the legislature had tried to remedy that. What about who's replacing you? And the person that replaces you, Ray, on the plant board, do they have any connections to anybody else?
No, not that I know of. He's a gentleman in Harrisburg, Arkansas, who is a rice farmer. A couple of his neighbors are on the Seed Growers Association, and they're very positive about him, and I don't think he has caused any problems, but he has no experience in this field. The biggest thing, the governor didn't reappoint Larry Giroux or Danny Finch. Danny was a cotton farmer representative. Larry was the oilseed and fertilizer representative. And he didn't reappoint those. And because the main reason I think he didn't reappoint, they were leadership on the board that helped lead that board to make decisions. A board's only as good as the leadership on it. And the governor has consistently and slowly tried to eliminate any leadership of people who would speak up and be willing to say anything. And he's also taken care of experience. These men had lots of time, and
so do you think they're okay? Do you think that you're no longer on the board, and these other men are no longer on the board because they were so outspoken against the use of dicamba? And do you think that eventually dicamba is going to be? I mean, if he succeeds in taking over the plant board, if for some reason there's the legislative will to do what he wants and to eliminate the status quo as it is. I mean, do you think that then, for example, let me just ask you this. If Asa had what he wanted, if the plant board looked the way he wanted it, would Monsanto be being sprayed right now? Or dicamba?
There would be no limitations on Monsanto's product of dicamba. They went to the Legislative Council asking us to expand, or the plant board to expand the dates you can produce it, and the plant board went back and looked at the weather conditions, the temperatures, the inversions that happen, and they didn't approve that. They left it where they had placed it because it was scientific information we used to decide when it could be sprayed.
We got last question, Ray. I'm sorry, then we got to go. The plant board is 100 years old. I'm told you guys wanted to recognize that in some way, and you guys met resistance by actually getting an official recognition of the 100-year anniversary of this historic board. Is that true?
That's true, and at the same time, an edict came out. Any plant board employee that is going to speak at or attend the conference has to get the permission from the Secretary of Ag, who gets the permission from the governor, and has to write a 300-page essay for it when they get back, telling them what they learned. So he's blocking them from interacting with other states as much as possible.
Ray Vester, I appreciate it, sir. Stay in touch. I'd love to have you on again soon. And if we didn't cover anything you wanted to cover, we can do another interview, okay?
I appreciate it very much, Paul.
Okay.
I appreciate what you do. This information has to be out to the public so they know really what's going on. We've got maybe one reporter in the state, in the statewide paper that prints this information. I don't know about local papers, but none of this information goes out to the general public.
I know.
And it's going to take care. It's going to take. Dicamba will wipe out family gardens, flower beds, shade trees, and everything else if it's allowed to be randomly sprayed without any regulation.
Ray, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you, Paul, and I'll be happy to come on at any time.
All righty.
Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. Folks, we got to go to break. Back in just a moment.
This is State Representative Dan Sullivan with a Liberty Moment. The Declaration of Independence states, to secure these rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. In other words, people are responsible for the character of their Congress. If that body be ignorant, reckless, or corrupt, it's because the people tolerate ignorance, recklessness, and corruption. If it be intelligent, brave, and pure, it's because the people demand these high qualities. If the next centennial does not find us a great nation, it will be because those who represent the enterprise and culture and morality of the nation do not abide in controlling the political forces. James Garfield. This is Dan Sullivan with the Liberty Moment.
Paid for by Sullivan for Arkansas.
Buy, sell, and trade at Triple R Pawn in Ash Flat. Firearms, computers, sporting goods, musical instruments, tools, jewelry, and everything else you can think of. It's all at Triple R Pawn at the Light in Ash Flat. Gun enthusiasts, log on now to triplrpawn.com and browse their amazing inventory. That's triplrpawn.com. You can also call them at 870-994-PAWN. That's 870-994-7296. Let the great team at Triple R Pawn help you find what you're looking for. That's Triple R Pawn at the Light in Ash Flat, triplrpawn.com, or call 870-994-PAWN.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
Yeah, man, I'm telling you, that was a very fascinating interview with Mr. Ray Vester, and we certainly appreciate him coming on the program. Folks, there's more behind this. There's more behind this, but there's a consistent pattern. Whether you're siding with PBMs and CVS Caremark or Monsanto or the corporate dentists over local dentists, it just, goes on and on. Or the insurance companies versus, everyday people out there working to pay for entitlement programs. There has to be something done. And, just go listen to our first hour of the program. If you missed it, you will not regret it. We're working on our podcast. The SoundCloud is down, so go to Conduit News and click on Video Archives. Watch the program. Back in a moment.